Good evening and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Studio GDT Reviews. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at a RyanSword entry-level Shinken. This sword doesn't have a number associated with it. A lot of times RyanSword has a Ryan 1335 or Ryan 1278. This doesn't have a number associated with it at this point in time or a listing, but it is something that you could ask for and be built at any point in time. I like to call this sword the Dojo Sword or a Dojo Cutter. And this might not be for everyone, especially someone who maybe already has a sword in their inventory and is looking for upgrading. But if you're looking at getting into cutting or you're looking at getting into Kenjutsu, one of the things that can hold you back a lot of the time is cost of entry and being able to get started with something relatively affordable. In Kenjutsu, that's one thing that turns away a lot of students. They come for a couple of classes, maybe they get a boken, they start using that for a while, and then it's time to move to Shinken, because a lot of times in Kenjutsu dojos you cannot use Iaito, or you do not really use Iaito, and then the student looks at the cost associated with it, and then maybe they stop coming to class, or they stop coming because they can't afford it at this point in time. Keeping these arts alive is an extremely important thing to me, which is why I review a lot of reproductions, because not everybody can afford Nihonto. It doesn't mean we can't keep the arts alive. The Dojo Sword or Dojo Cutter from RyanSword comes in right at $199 and has everything you would need in a Shinken to be able to train with in a dojo type environment. It can cut light targets, it can cut heavy targets. Most importantly for me is it is still assembled like a traditional sword. So not only can the student learn how to cut with it, learn how to respect it, revere the sword, but they learn the proper maintenance procedures with that sword, how to take it down, how to inspect it, how to clean it. A lot of entry-level cutting swords have cutting ability, but maybe they have a tsuka that's permanently affixed to the sword, so you don't get to learn that aspect of it, the care of it. So it does allow the student to learn the basics and then very easily transition into something else. Also, if you run a dojo or you run a kyokai and you're trying to get students to come, a lot of times you need a class sword, you need a loner sword. It needs to be something that you don't particularly care about. I remember my first loner sword was a Gunto with the metal handle, and it had an Iaito blade on it. It was terrible. I hated it. If someone could have put this sword in my hand, I would have at least felt like I was working with the real thing. So I'm excited about it. It might not excite some of you. Again, from an instructor standpoint, running a class, or getting people involved, or someone just getting into martial arts or cutting, be it in a dojo or backyard, I think this is an excellent option, and priced at $199. I think it's got enough of the features you would want. So let's take a look. Gotta do the thing first. I am an amateur martial artist. I am an amateur sword reviewer. I do not pretend to be an expert on either of those things. So take anything I say with a bit of skepticism and a tiny dash of salt. But I'm here to help. This sword was sent as a review sample so that you are fully aware of it. It wouldn't change my opinion either way. So please enjoy the review and carry on. Taking a look at the Dojo Cutter, you will see that it is a minimalist, no-frills sword with very minor aesthetic touches to it. It's designed to be used and is an embodiment of function over form. It may be simplistic in its appearance, but that is not to say that it looks bad. It definitely looks all the business. The tsuka does not have any sort of true defined shape, but that's partially because it does have a full samigawa wrap. So I do think that's important to take into consideration when you're talking about the price point and what they're going for with this sword. A very simple kashira is present, nothing special about it. It gets the job done, it's smooth. There are a lot of things on the tsuka that you would probably be able to substitute from within a specific category at no additional charge, so it is somewhat customizable. By default, it does not feature Manuki. That is something that you could change if you would want. It does, however, feature nice Samigawa with some Emperor nodes and a single Makugi, which I wouldn't have a problem with if they did that with all their swords and stuck with one single Makugi. There is no Hishigami present, however, the full Samigawa wrap does a pretty damn good job of keeping everything in place, and the tightness of the Ito is more than adequate for heavy use. As you can see in the video, everything is, for the most part, staying put. Although there is no defined Haichi or Riko shape in the tsuka, it also is not overproportioned or bulbous or anything like that. There are no hot spots, there aren't any odd protrusions underneath the Ito. It doesn't feel like you're holding a 2x4 in the hands. It feels just right. It feels like it's going to do exactly what you need it to do and is nice and tight and sturdy. The iron Tsuba features a Futatsu Tomoe style design, which the Tsuba could obviously be changed for other similar Tsuba within its category at no charge. The sword featured excellent Tsepa Tsuba Tsepa Saya fitment, as you can see here. With this being a budget sword, the Koiguchi area didn't feature anything spectacular on it. Mine came with some sort of discoloration on it, not entirely sure what that was, but it didn't affect functionality at all. The Ishime Saya was done very well in my opinion, and kind of doesn't really match the price of the sword. I think you could get this finish on a sword that costs more money, and you would think, yeah, that looks good. The Shitotomi are brass. I think that should have changed to match the silver-plated Tsepa and Habaki, but we're nitpicking here. Industry standard heavy-duty artificial silk Sageo is also present. It could have been shoelace Sageo, it could have been something much worse, but we at least get the heavy-duty style. Enough of the boring stuff, let's take a look at the business end of this beast here, which is the 1095 through tempered beefy blade here with bohi. And featuring, might I say, a geometric yokote at this price point. So we'll take a look at this in further detail here and dive right in. The silver-plated Tsepa and Habaki were definitely not my cup of tea, but there are some other options that they would allow you to change for no additional cost. My Habaki fit was off-center. It's possible that a reinstallation of this could fix the alignment of it, but it's also fairly common. The fit wasn't terrible otherwise and had some nice finishing. You can definitely see that there is some Niku present on the blade. Everything did align well. This sword features your pretty standard dimensions with a tsuka just over 10 inches or so. The blade length right at under around 28 inches and about that 1.6 centimeters of sori. I say about because there's always going to be a little bit of deviation, but that's kind of the standard template, if you will, that most of these swords use. The blade flats were nice and flat. The bohi was well done, didn't have a lot of ripples, if any, inside of it. I was pretty impressed with that. The mirror polish, although not the finest that I've seen, was definitely a hand-done polish and didn't have any of the skip marks that you normally see from a machine buffing that goes through it. One thing that is going to be hard for me to show here, since there isn't a hamon, is the geometric yokote. I did my best to try and give you the angle of it in a few different angles, but it actually is quite strong and pronounced, so that will help with the durability aspect of this. Nice to have it on a sword of this price. The particular type of he featured is of a Maru Dome type, which means rounded end, as you can clearly see. The one thing that this sword is loud. So if you had this as a classroom sword, as a trainer, someone to really learn cut alignment on, this thing is going to give you extremely instant feedback. It's definitely loud. So what are my final thoughts about this? This review is a little bit different in that it's not a sword that I'm talking to individuals about for their own personal journey. This is a sword that I think is great to talk to dojo owners about, or people who run classes and they need to have a loaner sword. All too often, the one thing that can prevent people from getting into these arts is the cost of entry,
In Kenjutsu, you don't really use Iaito, so there really isn't a whole lot of low-cost options, or so there weren't 20 years ago. Something like this would allow you to say, hey, why don't you try this out? Let me know what you think. If you want to buy something different, we'll get you into something different. So I think this does a really good job of accomplishing a price point, durability, full function use, teaching someone how to take a sword apart, and not breaking the bank. So I think they did a good job.